Whoa, hold up. That's not a revamp, but this is. Enjoy the video, you guys. The first new character clay model to showcase takes us back to the beginning days of the Nintendo GameCube to a game called Luigis Mansion. After my 6th playthrough of the game last October, I got inspired by the stylization of which Luigi was designed and his Poltergust 3000 accessory to immortalize him in clay sculpture. Here's Luigi sculpted out of pre-colored Sculpey 3 clay. The model itself stands on a miniature version of the game box that displays both front and back cover art. To ensure detail and accuracy, not only did I use game stills, but I also went into the game and played around with Luigi to see him from different angles. Despite being equipped with both Poltergust 3000 and Game Boy Horror accessory, I wish I could have captured a tad more accuracy in the placement of his vacuum handle. However, the scaling is near perfect and details on his vacuum are spot on. Believe it or not, at one point this guy was sculpted as a test Luigi. I sculpted Luigi with what was ultimately the remnants of a 30 color pack clay sampler, knowing that the colors did not exactly match the in-game model. A better resculpt was thought to be made at a later point, but in light of how well this one came out, I didn't want to push him aside with another one. The next model to be showcased here takes us to the Johto region. Roaming in the grasses is one of 3 legendary Pokemon to be encountered by the player. This is Raikou. Clearly, this is no ordinary clay model of Raikou because he has been sculpted in a style identical to that of his sprite form from the original Gold and Silver games. I wanted to add this unique twist because it would make him look so much more stylized and really stand out with his pastel colors, smooth surface finish, and precision detail around the face, paws, and pattern on the fur. Raikou is a bit of an oddball in that he was sculpted out of randomness one June afternoon last year. For no reason, I decided to dive into vintage Pokemon material, and over the course of a couple weeks I had completed this model, which is strange because with no real motivation as to why I started him, I'm surprised he didn't get forgotten about. Plus, there were no other clay models sculpted around this time in 2013. Regardless about how he could have ended up, Raikou definitely stands as one of my favorites for his obscurity, eye-pleasing simplicity, and clean paint job. Continuing on with models in obscurity brings up a more literal interpretation of obscure. I'm a pretty big fan of the Legend of Zelda series, and maybe an even bigger fan of game betas. Being so, I was incredibly intrigued when I learned of Zelda 64, the beta for Ocarina of Time, and the unfinished nature of the game's appearance. In light of this, I decided to put these two ideas together and test my Link sculpting skills. This is Link, as seen by his appearance in Zelda 64. I haven't sculpted a Link in at least 3 years, so to take one on for the first time in so long meant that it could be challenging, and it was. The only reference pictures I was able to use were a collection of stills showcasing Link from many different angles, and a couple beta gameplay videos. The hardest part of sculpting this model was not only the fact that I couldn't find any high-resolution 360-degree reference pictures, but also the blocky, simplistic 3D style that is much different than that of other Nintendo 64 models I've sculpted. A notable technique I used to sculpt the body and hat was creating the correct shape in aluminum foil and then covering the pieces with clay. This not only reduced the amount of clay I used, but also made it easier to create better looking shapes and proportions. For the 6 hours I put into sculpting Link, in which 2 of those were spent on the face, I enjoy looking at this model in all of his finished, unfinished presence. Yoshi is one Nintendo series that I'm not that familiar with. However, that didn't stop my intrigue with the Nintendo 64 era and all those classic N64 games with the artwork that follows. Putting that together with wanting to sculpt characters that I don't normally sculpt, you get Yoshi from Yoshi's Story. I really enjoy looking at the CG artwork style of Yoshi from Yoshi's Story, and I thought that it would transfer really well into a 3D clay model as most N64 artwork does. That was the beginning inspiration for this clay model, but if it sounds like I had an easy time sculpting him, it was the complete opposite. There's something in the simple appearance of Yoshi that makes every little off detail that much more noticeable, so to accurately sculpt his face was the first challenge. A little later on, the pose became the issue, because I wanted something natural looking but not entirely cliche. This model was very close to being scrapped, and it was definitely the most difficult and time-consuming clay model in this video. He took about 3 weeks to finish, and I probably clocked about 60 hours working on him. In all ends, I really think Yoshi's posture adds to his personality, with highlighting the red shell which would have otherwise been unseen. Sonic Heroes is a game that I often forget exists because I feel like it's overshadowed by other Sonic games on the GameCube, but when I do remember it, I always think of how unique of a game it was, with its team-based mechanics, reinvented characters, and really being the only modern Sonic game I had great difficulty in 100%ing. Being as it wasn't too long ago I completed the game in its entirety, I have much appreciation for it, and decided to immortalize my achievement in clay history forever. Yes! This is a mini diorama statue of Team Sonic in their end-of-stage victory pose from Sonic Heroes. This model stands out specifically for a number of reasons, both aesthetically and in its engineering. Firstly, all of the models were sculpted from precision, looking at multiple game styles and creating a smaller model that allowed me to capture more accuracy in how each character actually looks in-game. Each character took about 2 hours to sculpt. Also, this is the first time in many years, too many to count, of which I have sculpted a Sonic, Knuckles, or Tails out of pre-colored Sculpey clay. And from looking at my past models, these guys set a new standard. As for the engineering portion, I wanted to create a base for which all three characters would be connected together, and using the Sonic Heroes logo was the perfect idea. Putting Sonic and Knuckles on was fairly straightforward, but getting Tails to hover above the other two was harder, so I used a straw to hold him up from his stomach and his hand to balance on Knuckles' head as extra support. Together, these guys create a great memory of my time playing Sonic Heroes.
Hello!
Finally, we've made it to the last clay model for the video, and what better way to end than with a video game that single-handedly revolutionized the industry since its debut, Super Mario 64. Super Mario 64 is a game that I desperately want to play, while from a sculpting perspective and being a Nintendo fan, I again share my fascination and appreciation for the Nintendo 64 era. And in the 64-bit graphical style, Mario would simply be superb if I sculpted him out of clay. I've sculpted Mario 64 Mario before, however it looked nothing like this.
It's me, Mario!
Here is Mario, as seen from his Super Mario 64 in-game appearance. Despite being the last clay model to be showcased here, he was actually the second one to be completed for the video, getting finished around December of last year. He was definitely an impulse sculpt that was firstly sculpted out of a bunch of crappy clay mushed together, and then painted over with several layers of paint to cover the dark clay color, which, as a result, took several weeks to finish. There's something about Mario's specific shapes, completely unique to Super Mario 64, that is incredibly eye-pleasing and very well translated into the physical three-dimensional world, which is what I experienced when I was sculpting him. I've said before that I have favorite clay models, but this model really stands out to me in a different way than all the rest. When I first began sculpting Mario, I knew that I had to filter my Nintendo 64 passion as best as I could, not only into the raw sculpt, but also all the detailing that went into the model. Plus, there was the colors, and more specifically the facial details that I tried my hardest to match as best I could in relation to the in-game model. Even more intently, I studied the face and all the texturing and color variations that are present there in attempts to completely and more accurately than ever before match the way that Mario looks in-game. It was a testament to my replication and translation ability as an artist, but also something I wanted other people to appreciate. The validity of Super Mario 64 and what the game means to so many Nintendo fans and gamers, given its place in history, is another more nostalgic reason of why I wanted this model to look so good to the people who saw it, so that they could appreciate it and remember the very first time they played this very important video game. And I don't think any other Mario could have had the same lasting effects as this one's presence does. Hope you enjoyed, and until the sculpting continues, Finn!